This is Kamar Shima, and I'm honored and thrilled to have with me today Dr. Adil Sultan. He's the Dean of the Faculty of the Aerospace and Strategic Studies at the Air University, Islamabad. Formerly, he was working and he was a director at the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies in Islamabad. He has a long bio, which I can share for the next 10 minutes. Thank you very much, Dr. Adil Sultan, for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I just wanted to have a conversation with you that how technology is going to be the center of in the future of the geopolitics, and particularly what we have seen in Ukraine and in the Russian war. So, coming to the South Asia, which is obviously the topic of our conversation, how do you see the technology is going to define the India-Pakistan and if there is a possibility of the future war, and how the technology will be there between what role will it play between India and Pakistan in the future, sir?
Technology overall around the world, I think that is going to make significant changes everywhere in our daily lives, in daily conducts, or even if conflicts or wars, as we are seeing. But most of the technologies, as we say, these are emerging technologies. Not much is known about these technologies, how these technologies are actually going to affect a conflict, a future conflict between any adversaries. So once we talk about India and Pakistan, yes, we saw some changes, some impact of these technologies during the past crisis in 2019, when new concepts were introduced, aerial platforms were integrated, and we saw a significant departure from the previous crisis, especially 2019. But the technology that the world is focusing these days is about artificial intelligence, cyber, and these kind of things, or other space-based assets. These are yet to be tested. Yes, we have seen some in Ukraine, some aerial platforms being used, or Starlink being used, the satellites, the private entities coming into conflict between state entities. So that's also significant. But if we look at our region, South Asia, I think we are still learning. We are still trying to understand. It will take some time, but the way technology is evolving rapidly, it's not far off. And there is a likely possibility that some of these technologies will be used between India and Pakistan, or between any adversaries in the future.
So, sir, since you spoke of Starlink and satellite and how the private entities are there, when the Ukraine and Russian war started, the Ukrainian put a lot of their data on cloud. So, sir, how do you see where do you see Pakistan stand when it comes to innovation and when it comes to the technology? What is the status of Pakistan? Do you think that we are at par and we are investing in this direction?
We are on the learning curve. We cannot say that we are at par with other developed countries, or countries that have advanced cyber technologies. We are still learning. But once we see around various entities, government entities, the defense organizations, they are investing in these technologies because this is the future. And we know the impact that it can have on the battlefield, especially the cyber and the AI kind of a thing. We are on a learning curve, but we have a long, long way to go, and we have to invest heavily in this technology to cover that gap that we have from the other advanced countries.
So, Dr. Adil, how would you explain that? Do you believe that the air power is going to determine Pakistan's military power against India? Because since you mentioned 2019 as one of the incident or one of the time when the technology was there that was used in a conflict, do you think that the air power is going to determine the military capability between India and Pakistan? How do you rate this idea?
Once we say determine, I think that's more definitive. I would say would have significant impact. And once we talk about air power, I define it as aerospace power, because the future is about aerospace power, where the space-based asset integrated with your aerial platform, that would make significant impact on future battlefields. Yes, as we have seen the era of conventional wars, all-out wars, the land wars, the invasions, I think that is obsolete now, especially between nuclear weapon states. There is more likelihood of limited conflicts as it happened in 2019. So there are going to be crises where military would be used, but I don't see these tools being used for prolonged wars. These are going to be short and crisp, where aerospace power is likely to make decisive impact on the outcome.
Mm. So, how do you see the role of drones, sir, in the future of war, particularly between India and Pakistan? While the Americans were fighting the non-state actors in Afghanistan, Pakistan kept asking them for the drone technology. So, do you think that Pakistan has achieved that capability, or do you think that when it comes to the drone, we are still at the learning way?
Again, these technologies are evolving. There are some drones that are commercially available, as we have seen those drones being used in Ukraine also for small time surveillance and those kind of thing for situational awareness. But there are more advanced drones that countries like China, United States, they are building, Turkey. So I think there's plenty of room for all kind of drones, starting from the basic ones to the advanced drones. Having seen the efficacy of these drones, globally there is a trend because these are cost effective. Human beings are not involved. You can achieve limited objectives in a battlefield, whether it's for aerial reconnaissance, whether it's for hitting limited targets. I think these kind of technologies are proving to be very cost effective and very attractive for all the militaries around the world. And Pakistan, of course, is also interested. It has developed some drones on its own, and some of them were acquired from other countries. And that is how the technology is evolving. Every country is benefiting from each other's expertise. There's a huge market for drones, and Pakistan is also benefiting from there.
So, Dr. Adil, how do you see that Pakistan is being considered as Chinese threshold ally militarily? There was recently a report that was issued by the USIP here in Washington D.C. I just want to talk first. Do you think that this is being used, that Pakistan is going to be the threshold? Pakistan is a threshold ally. Do you think that this has some relevance? And then I will ask you another question on this.
I think it's another politically coined terminology which is being used to label Pakistan. If we apply the same standards, because I've read that report, this is equally applicable to brand India as a threshold state of United States. But because what India is doing is much more than what we are doing together with China. India has this bilateral agreements, the four foundational agreements, space situational agreement. They have an agreement where the aircraft or the ships, vessels, they can refuel from each other's facilities. So interoperability that people talk about, I think that's more advanced between India and United States. If you take that definition of a threshold state, which has been coined by one of our colleagues, former friends from across the border. I think that's more applicable to India, being a threshold state where they're short of strategic or formal alliance with the United States, but that strategic partnership has much deeper roots, much more potential, where both militaries would be operating. And this is also reflected in the alliances that are being formed in that region, like Quad, which they say it's not a military, but it has full potential to emerge as a military alliance in the future. Similarly, AUKUS, although India is not part of AUKUS, but you never know, it will expand in the future by if France agrees to join in, India also wants to join in. So that's what you talk about interoperability, having that military alliances. So I am not very excited about this term of a threshold state because it reflects that political intent where they want to see Pakistan as a subservient state to China, which is not true. And we also understand the political undertones behind these terminologies to belittle Pakistan, that Pakistan is dependent on China for its security. I don't think so. All the previous crises that we had between India and Pakistan, we stood on our own strength. 2019 was one classic example where China didn't was not required to assist Pakistan. So whatever we achieved, that was on our own. And likewise, 2001 and 2 and all those crises that we have experienced in this region. So I see this as a political term to label Pakistan and say that Pakistan is a subservient client state to China.
So there are two questions from this. What you have just said, that the one that is that you're talking that the India and America, they are short of an alliance, or short of a strategic alliance. But just yesterday or 2 days ago, I was looking that the America's ambassador to NATO has asked that they are going to offer India a membership in the NATO, but we want to see what is their intention. So don't you think that, that's something very big for Pakistan if India becomes a NATO's member? India didn't let Quad to be the military alliance. India didn't join AUKUS so far, although the French have joined recently. So where do you see if India joins NATO, or do you think that this is all hypothetical and we believe that India won't join it?
I don't think so. It doesn't serve India's interest, one. Secondly, NATO has different objectives. So it was, as we all know the history, it was intended against former Soviet Union, or now if we see against Russia, and some say Russia and China together. India geographically also, and India because its objectives would not be served by becoming an ally of the NATO. India traditionally, we have seen, it wants to milk both sides. It has maintained good relations with Russia also. It doesn't want to go to an extreme where it is considered as a very hostile state to China also. So I think India is reaping all the benefits. It doesn't have to formally join NATO. It is getting more privileges than any NATO countries in terms of military equipment, in terms of political support. So I don't see any big advantage for India to formally join NATO. And again, if President Trump comes in, there would be more demands from NATO countries. So India wouldn't want to be in that position where India is asked to pay for its security. I don't think so. That goes along with the political philosophy of Indian leadership.
And yes, obviously, it seems difficult that why the Europeans will pay for the
Yeah.
India's defense. They can pay for the Russia. So one quick question about the report. The report says that from 1970 till to 2021, it is the Pakistan Air Force which has been getting massive support from China. So why do you think that? Is it because the Air Force has been neglected, or do you believe that the Air Force is going to be the dominant arm for any future conflict? That's why Pakistan is getting more technical support from China.
It was because during much of this period, we were under sanctions. So we had no other choice. So we had to explore alternate means. And that's where China played its role. It provided the aircraft. So whenever the United States offered aircraft, we readily accepted those aircraft from United States. But we have seen over the past many decades, this military supply is mostly used for achieving certain political objectives. And off and on, we have been sanctioned by United States, where even spare parts during crisis were also stopped. So that's why these periods that this report talks about, 80s period, we were under sanctions, and that's why we look towards China. And subsequently also, United States is quite reluctant to transfer technology. Whatever the aircrafts that United States or the weapon systems they provide, it comes with certain strings attached. The Chinese equipment doesn't have those kind of bindings. So that's the advantage that Pakistan has. And JF-17 is one example where there was a mutual partnership, collaboration, and we were able to develop our own aircraft. United States doesn't allow this kind of technology transfer to Pakistan. They have offered this to India, even F-16's transfer of technology. If United States was so open, I think Pakistan would have gone preferably to US aerial platforms. And that has always been a preference from the very start. But because of these off and on sanctions, which did affect Air Force specifically, So I think that the decision makers, they opted to look for alternative means like China or any other country.
Mm. So, Dr. Adil, the last question to you is that since you are a part of the academia, so do you think that since we have just talked about AI and this technological innovation, do you think that the Pakistan, there is a public-private partnership when it comes to the technological innovation and helping our defense industry in terms of artificial intelligence? Do you think that our institutions, academic platforms are helping the private sector or the state authorities, or there is some work going on this side?
We do not have that kind of structure in place in Pakistan where commercial entities or civil entities, they develop these technologies and from where the military industrial complex can benefit. We do not have that kind of a model. Mostly these technologies were developed by military, and the civilian, they did it to an extent limited one. They acquired or they worked with the outside entities, the other big giants, technology giants. So it's very limited. But I think the success depends upon this. If we reverse, if we have to succeed, we have to reverse this model. What we have to do is invest more in our civilian industrial infrastructure, because these technologies, these have huge potential in the civilian domain, and you cannot just limit it for military applications. So if you encourage in Pakistan private companies, entities to do research and support that, fund those research, I think they will have significant advantage in the civilian uses also. And from there, military can always pick and choose whatever is relevant to them. I've been very vocal about it, especially about space technologies. Once we have always looked space from a military dimension. Space has a huge potential and application in the civilian domain. Look at our neighbor India. It is earning billions of dollars by just launching satellites, the commercial satellites. We started our space program much earlier, before 1 or 2 years before India. We stayed there. India has progressed, and that's because they focused more on the commercial side, and that's how their industry grew. I think if we have to be successful in that, we have to encourage private entities in this field and in the satellite launch and other activities. We have to enter into a joint collaborations with the outside entities also, and from there, because these technologies always have dual use purpose, so you can always benefit if you want to benefit in the military domain. Likewise, AI, artificial intelligence, the developments that are happening globally, they are mostly in the civilian sector, and militaries all around the world, they are benefiting from whatever technology is coming up, being introduced. They are benefiting from these. I think that's the model. In the academia, I can say for like in Air University, we have this first National Center for Cyber Security, and we are also in the process of building this National Academy for Cyber Security. I have seen my colleagues working in this issue hand in gloves with the government and doing lots of projects which are for the which have commercial utility. So I think there is serious realization in the government also and in the academia also, that if we have to compete for even commercial dividends, not to talk about the military side, the commercial dividends, they have to work together and they have to work with the entities outside the country also. And that's how the technologies have to evolve. No single person can say that they are going to work in a cocoon, or they, just work on the military aspects. I think the more potential in the civilian, and from where the military can benefit. And there is a realization, and lots of other universities also in Pakistan now, they are focusing on this artificial intelligence and cyber and other aspects.
That's right, that the private sector needs to jump in. That's where the money will be generated, and that's where more interest will be there. Thank you very much, Dr. Adil Satan, Dean of Faculty of Aerospace at Universities, for speaking to NHS Media. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.